Hi everyone. In the previous video, we have tried building a Windows virtual machines across availability zones. And in the previous videos, we have dealt with VNet peering and creating virtual networks and subnets. In this video, we are trying to go and create a application gateway. And the VMs which we have created in the previous across the availability zones. I show the diagram. In the previous ones, we have tried dealing with this all these virtual machines, which are the front end, which are hosted on IA, which is hosting IaaS platform, which this workload has been deployed across the availability zones in this subnet. Now, similarly, right now we are going to create an application gateway and we are going to add all the VMs which are being created as a backend pools for this application gateway. And we are going to create a front end configuration. And the front end configuration, we will set up that front end configuration. Um, which is the public IP, and we'll try sending a HTTP request, and we'll see whether it is received or not. So let's go ahead with the script, which is Azure Application Gateway. This is the one which it's pointing out to, and I'll just copy this one. I could see that they have defined lot of variables. We are not going to touch at this point of time those. So I'm going to create a text file separately for an application gateway. I'm going to paste it here and going to name this as Terra app, as there is only one application gateway, so I'll not be encountering any issue. So I'm going to name it as Terra-app, and the resource group where it is going to be created as in the same in this app-cndrg. So the referencing is Terra-app. So I'm referencing that, and the gateway name is app gateway cndia. Application gateway. I think this should be good enough. App gateway hyphen C India, and the SKU will be standard v2. So if you can go and look at the SKU parameter here, you could actually send standard v2 v2. So let's do it. So if you see, availability zones are only supported in several regions at this time. They are only supported only for V2 SKUs. So that's the reason why we are preferring, as we deployed the machines in availability zone, and the application gateway should be taken care of in availability zones support. So we have to go for standard V2 here, and I'll leave the capacity as 2 here. I'm not going to change anything on that. And the gateway configuration, I'll leave it, I will change it to app gateway C India IP configuration. And this is, I have to create an own subnet, because when I create an application gateway, it needs its own subnet in a network. So I'm going to create a subnet for this one. So I'm going to copy this and create in Terra app subnet for app gateway, and going to name it as app gateway subnet, or I can actually leave it like app gateway. And the I'm going to keep it in the last button, which is 254. There's 255 too, but I'm leaving that for VNet gateway, and I'll keep it this for 254.0. And I'm going to save this, and I'm using gonna use this referencing here. So this gateway IP configuration will you created in that subnet, and the front end port name. So I'm going to keep it as front end port, or I'm going to say front end HTTP port, and the configuration is the app gateway front end. So I'm have to keep it in similarly in double quotes. Front end IP. I can make it as PIP. I'll give it like IP, and here I have to create a public Azure RM IP. Let me go. I'll do this later on, so I'll just keep it at this point of time. Comment, and there should be a local address pool name. So the address pool name for this is front end pool, or I can keep it as web servers pool, but I'll just keep it as front end pool, and app gateway front end IP, and the settings name is front end HTTP settings. I'll remove the path here, and I'll leave it as disabled HTTP port, and this should be good. The listener name, let's because what are we trying to create here? When we create an application gateway, we need a front-end IP configuration for the uh, app gateway, and that is what we have done. And it needs app gateway needs VNet, where it can actually need a subnet so that it can function, and that is what we have done here in gateway IP configuration. And now coming to the backend address pool, we need to configure a backend address pool, and then we need to configure listeners and HTTP settings. And this listeners and HTTP settings, we'll use it in routing request routing rule. So that's what is happening right now. So configure created a backend pool, but I haven't addressed anything at this point of time, and I'm going to leave this as it is, and going to configure backend HTTP is done. Listener name, I'm going to say that front end HTTP listener, and the front end IP configuration name is this one. We're gonna keep it here, and similarly the port name is front end port name is HTTP port. I'm going to keep it as front end HTTP port, and similarly, so there might be a naming constraint also, so you have to be careful while you are deploying all this, because the limit name size of the name might be the limit of sometimes. So let's see while deploying we'll get any issues or not. And the routing rule is going to give the HTTP listener here this front end HTTP listener, and the pool name is front end pool, and the HTTP settings is front end HTTP settings. So what is happening? If any request comes in the 80 port, it is was sending it to front end HTTP of to this port 80 port, and yeah, this is it. Now we have to create a public IP address. So let me go copy this and search here. So we have here Azure RM public IP, and this is the one. So I have to create one more text file for this public IPs, and I'm going to say terra-app, and on that I'll mention it as front end app app gateway PIP public IP address, and it should be in the terra-app. So this is good. But as we are creating a standard V2 application gateway, we're creating a SKU, so it needs uh, by default it is going to create a basic public IP, but I wanted a allocation, which one it is? This one to be the standard IP. So the SKU is by default it is basic. So I wanted to keep the SKU as standard, and I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste that here. I'm going to remove the comments, and I think we are good. I'm going to mention it as app gateway, app gateway.tf, and this one I'm going to name it as ip.tf. So let me go, and right now I'm at this. I'm going to run Terraform Validate, and I could see an error. It's saying that Terra-app gateway ID has not been declared. So I didn't save this after creating, so that is why there is an issue, syntax issue. But so as per syntax, it is right. Now I'll do a Terraform plan. So let me see if I'm getting any errors here. So everything is good. I'm not getting any errors. Now the only thing which has been left out is I created an app gateway and I public with a public IP and everything. Only thing is I have to ensure that these VMs are the front end VMs are being attached uh, to the application gateway. How will I do that? So there should be app gateway backend address pool. This is the one which connects network interface, each network interface of VM to the backend address pool of the application gateway, and this is the command for that. So here we create a virtual network, subnets are created for both, and the public IP is done, and we create an application gateway here, and then we have even delivered this. So I'm going to use this resource called which connects the network interfaces to. application gateway. I can do this in this front-end instance, but as I'm configuring backend pools for the machines, uh, here I'm going to do this here. And I'm going to name this network interface Azure RM network interface with this. But each one comes with count.index, and each configuration name will be the same thing, which is frontend Nick C India, and the backend address pool here is going to be so how do I reference this? It's referencing to the backend address pool ID. So I can take this. So one thing which I can do is Azure RM application gateway, and in that Terra app is this one. So I have to keep it as Terra-app, and then I have to use backend address pool, and in that the first one is front end. So I'll keep it as the first pool, which is front end pool and ID. So this should be good. But I have to just name this as Terra app, even this one, and I can save this, and I can do Terraform validate here. Cannot set an index value, so I didn't use the count functionality here. This should be good. So I'm asking to perform 3 times, count 3 times, take each of the network interface. So it will be so if we have seen the plan, so each one is 2 1 0 as per referencing Windows Virtual Machine Terraform app. Similarly, if you go with network interface and we look at the network interfaces, it is the same thing. Azure RM network interface Terra-app front end 2 1 and 0. So I wanted that each of this network interface IDs. So for that, I'm running it as count. So that will be 0, 1, 2, and each of the IP configuration names. And this is the application backend address pool. So this is not going to change. This is going to be only pointing out to the front end pool. And this is how we're fixing it. So here I do a Terraform validate now. This should be working out. I see that still it was not there. Count.index. So there is an value network interface. Azure RM network interface application address pool Terra app backend address pool of 0. 0. So I created some change here. I believe everything is going good. Everything. Capacity to Terraform Validate. Seems there is an issue. Just give me a minute. So I could able to find the figure out the error. As per the example, we have to convert into two lists and then we take the first one. So when I take this address pool, I'll get a list of pools in that one. I would like to get the first one. So I take the 0 and of ID. So we can actually keep it this way and it's validation is successful. So that is the only tweaking change which I have done. And I'll go back here and make it as VM config IP. This should be good. So I'll even point out to this IP config one, so it will be more easier me to go and look for which VM it is. Is this configuration is pointing out to. So I'll do a validation. Now I'm going to do a Terraform plan. And let's wait for a couple of seconds. Now we could see that the it is creating a front end three machines and an application gateway. Everything is functioning well. So I'll go ahead and create. I'll start deploying. Apply hyphen auto approve. So the deployment will start off. So what are the changes which I have done in this application gateway? Only this one. I just copied the same thing and created a configuration test configure named with this so and so configuration name, and that is I just tried mapping up with the same naming convention so that tomorrow when I start looking for each of these network interfaces, it is easier for me to map that. This is good. So let's wait for the deployment to succeed. So it's going and deploying that entire architecture. This is the entire architecture. If we say first is going into deploying the VNet and then it is deploying on the VNet, it is creating the front end subnets and it is doing a VNet peering and then it is creating VMs in an availability zone. So it's taking a image. Already there is an image right now and it is going ahead and taking that image. So it is in this images C India RG. So it's going and taking this image, and with that image, it is creating this VMs in availability zone. And after that, it is creating an application gateway. It is creating a public IP for this application gateway, and after that it is going and attaching all this VMs as a backend pool for this application gateway, and it is going and creating a routing rule. So whenever the HTTP request is going back to this application gateway, it goes and con goes to any of these VMs. So it is balancing the load in such way. So let's wait for the deployment to complete. It's going to go around around at least next 4 minutes. I'm going to pause the recording. So we got a deployment error, which is trying to say that so and so address prefix should follow CIDR notation. So what happened? I did a typo error. If I go into the network, I could see that there is 254.s. So that has already been said in this error. So I'm going to save this. So this is how we can face a runtime exceptions during the Terraform apply also. So what it is trying to do right now, it will for whatever resources which are being created, it's not going to make any changes to it, but whichever are being created as an error, those will be destroyed and will be recreated once again. So they will be flagged And if you see right now, there are 5 resources which are being added. One is the application gateway and the attaching the network interfaces to the backend address pool and a subnet of which is for application gateway. So it's going, the subnet is going and getting created. So let's wait for the creation provisioning to be completed. I'm going to pass the recording. So let's see, the deployment has been completed. So it took around closely 5.5 minutes more for the deployment to complete. So it is successful. I'll go back to the resources, all resources list, and I could see that 3 VMs are being created and there is a application gateway and that is having a front end IP configuration as 4 dot. This. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it here. So it should send it to any of one of the servers and I could see that it is being sent to one of the machine which is in this 3 machines. So this is how the it's going on, guys. So this is how it works. So here we're going to right now deploy in the next class an internal load balancer along with this machine. So I have to create a machine which runs this dynamics and we'll create an image and we'll do the same format the way we have done for this, and we have to create an internal load balancer and we can choose to create a SQL DB on a VM or a SQL database. I'll prefer taking here a SQL database, and then I will configure for each of this as a diagnostic settings through Azure Log Analytics workspace, and I'll try to monitor all this services using Azure Monitor. And I'll configure few automation jobs. Again, those things to automation account jobs, and then we can actually configure Azure DNS for this. So let's stay tuned for this channel, and I'll post few more videos on this. Thank you.